Green described being under government thought control and said he was being watched. Well, I mean, he's not wrong. You'll remember way back when, long time ago of last week, when some guy, all right, now I say guy because I'm basically telling you what the news media told you. It was some guy. But if it was a white guy, I would have said some white supreme. But it wasn't a white supreme. It was a African-American gentleman, suspect, if you will. So in this KTLA article from LA, of all places, more than a lifetime away, from Washington, D.C., more details released about Noah Green, suspect in deadly Capitol attack. I bet you're asking yourself out there, what Capitol attack? I don't know. Oh yeah! That Capitol attack that they couldn't push a narrative, the news media that is, or the government or the potatoes administration, and couldn't get any traction off of it, any tread. So it just sort of went into the ether. But you folks out there in Lazlohead know better than that. I would let something like this go without being looked over after. You see, I barely even touched on this last week because I wanted to make sure that, the news media did its job. And of course, they didn't. All we know about this guy is that he's a black supremacist, apparently and allegedly. So the man who rammed a car into two officers at a barricade outside the U.S. Capitol, killing one of them before he was shot to death by police, had been suffering from delusions, paranoia, and suicidal thoughts. A U.S. official told the Associated Press investigators believe it was an isolated incident from a disturbed young man. Oh. So what you're saying here is that this guy right here, and you haven't even mentioned what race he is, because I know what you're going to say. What does it matter? Well, it matters because you would mention his race if he was a white guy. But in this case, you're not going to get any attraction after it. You're not going to push your anti-white or woke narrative that all white people are bad and angry and want to attack the police. And oh wait, that's not usually the case. But interestingly enough, they're not talking about it. Why? They're not even showing a picture of the guy's face. Why? You know why, and I just talked about it. The video of Friday afternoon attack shows a driver emerging from the crash car with a knife in his hand and started to run at the pair of officers. Capitol Police Acting Chief Yogananda Pittman told reporters police shot the suspect, 25-year-old Noah Green, who died at the hospital. Again, no picture. But if you'd have to look at the internet and look real good to make sure that you got all the information about him. What was his color? What was his background? You see, we're already 2 paragraphs in, and there's not even talk about his Instagram or his. You have to go to paragraph 4. Paragraph 3 now. Investigators are increasingly focused on Green's mental health as they work to identify any motive for the attack. If you just want a motive, you look at his Instagram, said the official, who is not authorized to speak publicly about the ongoing investigation and spoke to the AP on Saturday on condition of anonymity. I hate that word. Anyways, the official said investigators had talked to Green's family, who spoke of his increasingly delusional thoughts. Now we go to paragraph 4. In online posts since removed, of course, gotta get rid of the evidence, Green described being under government thought control, and said he was being watched. Well, I mean, he's not wrong, but I don't think they're really looking at him. But they were. He described himself as a follower of the Nation of Islam and his longtime leader, Louis Farrakhan, and spoke of going through a difficult time when he learned or leaned on his faith. Some of the messages were captured by the group SITE, which tracks online activity. To be honest, these past few years have been tough, and these past few months have been tougher, he said, wrote in late March. I've been tried with some of the biggest unimaginable tests in my life. I am currently now unemployed after I left my job, partly due to afflictions, but ultimately in search of a spiritual journey. It was the second line of duty death this year for the Capitol Police, struggling to heal from the January 6th Capitol Hill riot, not insurrection, you douche. The attack underscored that the building and campus and the officers charged with protecting them remain potential targets for violence. Really? Did you ever see the regular police force out there in Los Angeles during the riots last year in the summer when the police were being attacked, hurt, and afflicted by many of the peaceful protesters? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You had no word about that. That was just social justice. This guy was just a disturbed young man. Authorities installed a giant fence, blah, 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 blah. Police identified the slain officer as Willie Billy Evans, an 18-year veteran who was a member of the department's first responders unit. Of course, Potato and the Cruella de Vil had something to say about it. So here's what they say. The 5 people died in the January 16th peaceful protest, including Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who was among the badly outnumbered force trying to fight off intruders, which, by the way, they're KTLA 5. The police let them in through the barricades. Why? Don't know. So, again, not much from the media other than online sources. You don't see anything on ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Daily, because if this was a white guy and he was tied to somehow to Donald Trump, you guarantee it that the news media would be going through this guy's life with a fine-tooth comb. But now, since they can't push a narrative because of his skin color and who he was tied to spiritually, Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, no word. Don't even talk about it. Why? You know why. The narrative. It always comes back to the narrative. They don't want to talk about this because they don't want to look too far into this guy's life because they might find out this guy was a potato supporter. Guarantee it. But hey, far be it from me to actually do the news media's job. I mean, they want me to do their job because they don't want to do their job themselves, because they don't want to look into this guy's life. They don't want to mention that this guy's skin color is opposite of mine. But if it was the same skin color as mine, you're guarantee it that they would be all over this guy's life. They'd be to his family. They would be looking at his internet search history. They would find out who he voted for. But since they can't do that now, dare they be called racist? Nope, can't do it. It's actually into the ether. We don't care about it anymore. Even though, just yesterday, up in the left-hand corner here, deadly U.S. Capitol attack amplifies police union calls to beef up recruitment and retention. Interestingly, you should say that. Retention and recruitment when you want to defund the police in Washington, D.C. Oh, but now, because there's some white Supremes coming into Washington, D.C. But there again, we can ignore the black Supremes because they're tied to the Nation of Islam. And by the way, Islam, we can't make fun of Islam. We can't criticize Islam because racism. And that's why we come back to the all-important narrative as I come to a close here. The narrative. The news media doesn't want to push the narrative here because it'll go against what they were pushing recently as of January 6th. There's a bunch of white people right around. A lot of itzies around there, around every bush, and they're going to attack. Not true. But we got something like this last week. Not a mention in the news anymore because it goes against the news media and the government's and the potatoes administration narrative. This doesn't push their narrative. It actually hinders the narrative. And that is why you will not hear anything about this ever again, possibly, unless something else comes up that this guy was tied to Donald Trump, which, in fact, he wasn't.